Most people believe the moment they feel judged, everyone around them can sense it. You walk into a room feeling insecure, and your mind tells you, they know. You stumble over your words in a conversation, and something whispers, they noticed everything. You react emotionally, and you assume the entire room filed it away as weakness. But here is what psychology actually reveals. Most of the time, they weren't watching you at all. Think about the last time you felt deeply self-conscious. Maybe it was a meeting where you said the wrong thing. Maybe it was a social gathering where you felt out of place. Maybe it was a conversation where your voice shook slightly and your thoughts scattered, and afterwards, you replayed every moment for hours. You assumed other people carried those moments too. You assumed their minds archived your discomfort the same way yours did. But this is where something extraordinary happens inside human psychology. A cognitive illusion so deeply wired into us that most people never realize it controls their behavior. It is called the illusion of transparency. And once you understand it, you will never experience social anxiety the same way again. Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, "All warfare is based on deception. But the most profound deception is never one you create. It is the one your own mind creates about yourself." Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries before modern psychology had a name for it. He observed that people do not respond to what is real. They respond to what they perceive to be real. And Robert Greene, building on that tradition, wrote that, "The key to power is the ability to judge who is best able to further your interests in all situations." But before you can read others clearly, you must stop misreading how they see you. The greatest strategists in human history were not just students of their enemies. They were students of perception itself. In the next few minutes, you will understand the psychological illusion that makes you believe your emotions are far more visible than they are. Why this illusion quietly erodes your confidence every time you enter a social situation. How the people around you are far more consumed by their own invisible performance than yours. And finally, how understanding perception dynamics creates a quiet psychological advantage most people never develop. Stay with this, because the deeper we go, the more useful it becomes. Here is the psychological principle. When you feel something strongly, anxiety, embarrassment, excitement, fear, your mind automatically assumes that feeling is radiating outward, that it is visible on your skin, in your eyes, in the air around you. Psychologists have studied this extensively. In one study, participants who were lying consistently believed others could detect their deception at rates far higher than observers actually could. The internal experience of emotion is so vivid to you that your brain confuses intensity with visibility. Think about a musician performing on stage for the first time. Their hands are shaking. Their heart is pounding. They are convinced the audience sees every tremor. But the audience? They see a musician playing music. The performance happening inside you almost never matches the performance others witness. Machiavelli would say this directly. Appearance is the only currency people trade in. If you control what others see, it matters very little what you feel. This brings us to the second illusion. Psychology calls it the spotlight effect, the tendency to overestimate how much other people notice about you. In a famous Cornell University study, participants wearing an embarrassing t-shirt estimated that roughly half the room would notice. The actual number? Less than 1 in 4. Here is why this matters strategically. The person across from you in a conversation is not analyzing your word choices. They are rehearsing their own. The colleague watching you stumble through a presentation is quietly worried about their own next moment in front of the room. Everyone is the main character of their own internal drama. And that means your stage fright is largely performing for an empty theater. Sun Tzu understood this dynamic through a different lens. He wrote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." Knowing yourself begins with seeing yourself accurately, not through the distorted mirror of anxiety, but through the clear lens of how others actually perceive. Now here is where the psychology deepens. If most people are not watching you as closely as you believe, what are they actually responding to? The answer is emotional signals. Not your words, not your logic. The emotional frequency you broadcast. When you enter a room calm, people categorize you as composed. Not because they analyzed you, but because composure is a signal that travels faster than conversation. When you react emotionally, when you raise your voice, when you visibly need validation, you broadcast something else entirely. Not weakness, necessarily, but legibility. You become readable. And readable people are predictable. Predictable people are manageable. Robert Greene writes in the 48 Laws of Power, "Make your accomplishments seem effortless." This is not about deception. It is about signal discipline. The most psychologically powerful people in any room are not the loudest or most expressive. They are the ones whose interior life remains just slightly out of reach. Strategic silence is not emptiness. It is the most deliberate form of communication. But here is the most interesting part of this entire psychological picture. And most people miss it completely. The illusion of transparency, the spotlight effect, emotional signaling. These are not primarily about hiding weakness. They reveal something far more striking about human nature. Most people are so consumed by their own performance that they barely register yours. Which means the judgment you have been living in fear of is largely a story you wrote yourself. The prison, in most cases, was never locked from the outside. This leads to something Machiavelli observed about human nature that modern psychology has since confirmed. People project. When someone is critical of you without reason, they are often criticizing something they recognize in themselves. When someone assumes you are performing, calculating, or dishonest, it is frequently because they are. Psychology calls this projection the unconscious displacement of one's own internal experience onto others. Understanding this changes everything about how you receive criticism. Not every criticism requires defense. Some criticism requires only quiet observation. The person telling you that you seem arrogant may simply be someone who wishes they had your confidence. The person who insists you have bad intentions may be revealing their own relationship with intention. See the mirror before you accept the image. The final principle is perhaps the most strategic. In any social, professional, or interpersonal dynamic, whoever understands more than they reveal holds the advantage. This is what economists call information asymmetry. Sun Tzu called it strategic positioning. Greene called it selective revelation. When you understand the illusion of transparency, you stop over-explaining yourself. When you understand the spotlight effect, you stop shrinking in rooms where no one is scrutinizing you. When you understand emotional signaling, you begin composing your signals with intention rather than reaction. And the cumulative effect of these shifts is not arrogance. It is composure. It is the quiet confidence of someone who understands that perception is not fate. It is a practice. Machiavelli wrote, "Men in general judge more by the sense of sight than by the sense of touch." He meant that people believe what they see, and see almost entirely what you choose to show them. Sun Tzu taught that the greatest battles are won before they begin, in the positioning, in the preparation, in the silence before the engagement. What modern psychology confirms is simply this: the battlefield has always been perception. And most people walk through their entire lives fighting wars that only exist inside their own minds, believing they are being watched, judged, archived, and cataloged, when the person beside them is fighting the exact same invisible war. So what does this actually change for you? First, when you feel self-conscious in a social situation, remind yourself, the spotlight is a cognitive illusion. Others are not studying you. They are managing themselves. Second, begin to observe emotional signals rather than react to them. Before you speak in conflict, ask, what signal am I about to broadcast? Third, embrace strategic silence. Not every thought requires expression. Not every emotion requires an audience. Composure is not suppression. It is selection. Fourth, when you receive criticism or judgment, pause before you internalize it. Ask what it reflects about its source, before asking what it reflects about you. And finally, understand that quiet psychological power is not about controlling others. It is about no longer being controlled by the distorted image your own mind creates of how you are perceived. Most people move through their lives performing for a theater they built in their own imagination. Carrying shame about moments no one remembers. Shrinking in rooms where no one is measuring them. Reacting emotionally to signals they misread entirely. But the person who understands perception, who studies the mechanics of how human beings actually see and respond to each other, that person moves differently. Not louder, not harder, quieter, clearer, more deliberate. Machiavelli wrote, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by strategy." The same is true of confidence. You do not need to perform it. You only need to stop believing the illusion that told you it was necessary in the first place. If this changed the way you see human behavior, subscribe for more psychological insights rooted in philosophy and strategy. New ideas every week. And drop one word in the comments below that captured what this meant to you. Awareness, if you are choosing observation over reaction. Composure, if this is the shift you needed. The people in this community understand something most people don't. And now, so do you.